Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And this week, I wanted to talk to you about the Sun-Saturn opposition on August 2nd, followed by the Sun-Uranus square on August 6th. Now, if you've been watching these spots previously, you would have seen that I've talked quite a bit about Mars and Venus both traveling through this same volatile patch of sky. When Mars traveled through it a few weeks ago, this signaled a period of time in which your own good intentions, that is, your willingness to do right by someone else, probably ran afoul and ended up getting you into trouble, only to wind up validating your position in the end. That was followed by Venus traveling through the same volatile patch of sky. And Venus in this patch of sky might have resulted in a sort of distancing between you and a loved one, where you might have felt like you were trying to show love and support for a loved one who was dealing with some troubles, only to be rebuffed. And the advice back then was to remember that your loved one was going through troubles and maybe to give that person some space and not to make the situation about you, which is something we all tend to do when someone's going through a really difficult time. We want to show them our support and our understanding. And so when we're rebuffed or sort of treated shabbily, we can feel hurt. It's a natural human reaction. But we're also at that period of time asking a lot of someone who's struggling with some really tall orders. This week, the sun enters the same exact treacherous part of sky, where it forms an opposition to Saturn and then squares Uranus. And this passage, the sun going through this particular part of the sky, is going to be much more powerful and much more impactful than the two previous planetary transits were. Why? Well, because the sun is the planetary ruler of Leo, right? It's the planet, although it's really a star, but it's really the planet that rules the zodiac sign of Leo. So when the sun is in Leo, that means it's in domicile or it's at home. So the sun is going to be very strong when it's in the zodiac sign of Leo, which is where it will be on August 2nd. Now it's going to be opposite Saturn, which is going to be in domicile or at home in Aquarius, which is exactly opposite the sun's placement on the horoscope. Okay, so where the sun is going to be very fiery and self-affirming, Saturn is going to be very cool and detached and distant. So what you have going on with an opposition like this is really a polarization of the two planets. We try to say something like, well, there's a conflict or difficulty or something like that, but those words belong to an aspect called the square. They do not belong to an opposition. When you have two planets that are opposite each other in the sky, they are polarized. An example that I like to use is our current Congress. You have the Democrats and the Republicans on opposite sides of the aisle, and there's no attempt to try to communicate with either side. I mean, there are efforts made at bipartisan agreement or motions or things like this, but pretty much what happens is everyone winds up going to their opposite corners and just sort of staring at each other. And this is the same sort of thing that's going to go on between the sun and Saturn. The sun is most powerful in Leo, and Saturn is at home or most powerful in Aquarius. So what does that mean for you exactly? This opposition between the sun and Saturn is what I often call the me against the world opposition. Okay, with the sun in Leo, you're going to feel a very strong sense of yourself. You know that what you're saying is right, what you're standing up for is good, and that what you represent is something that everyone should really sign on for and see it as being a terrific thing. The Saturn in the opposite end of the horoscope, in the opposite sign in Aquarius, is all of those people who aren't you. Okay, this can make you feel like these are people who are looking down their nose at you. These are people who are so different from you that you have nothing in common with them. Or these are people who just really want nothing to do with you at all. So a Sun-Saturn opposition can pretty much manifest in three ways. It can either appear as a feeling of you facing exacting standards that you're never ever going to meet, no matter how hard you try. The second way that it can show up is you trying to uh, make nice with a group that will just never open up the doors to you at all. And the third way that it can show up is because Aquarius is connected to the stars at night. It can be this feeling that everything that you're aspiring towards, like the stars, remains out of reach. So all of your aspirations and your hopes and your wishes remain out of reach. And you may feel this week like you're standing and looking at this, at these things, that there is a tremendously wide gulf that stands between you and them. Now, this isn't an opposition that's taking place by itself. This is an opposition that is anticipating a square. So let me break that down a little bit more for you. Okay, so where the sun is going to side with you, okay, these are the things that, I think I'm a good person, or I think I'm worthy, or I think I'm deserving. Okay, Saturn is opposite, and it just isn't listening to it at all. And that can leave the sun feeling like it's unworthy, or it's not a good person, or what am I, chocolate? Okay, so there's this feeling of just this opposition there. But what an opposition also does is that it draws a line in the horoscope. Okay, it's kind of like, think of it as drawing a line in the sand. Well, actually, what it really does is that it draws a line in the horoscope. And whenever we have planets in opposition, or planets transiting planets in our chart that are in opposition, what's happening, and the reason why they're always associated with breakups or things falling apart, or ultimatums being issued, or things breaking down, is because an opposition between planets is really the period of time when the energy between these two planets are weakest. There's little, if no, understanding of the other side. Okay, a sextile and a trine will aid and abet. A square will at least introduce a conflict, but an opposition really kind of shows up as a crack. It's a fault line. It's a weakness. So anything that goes over this can break the energy that's going on between the planets. So what I want you to do is think of this opposition between the Sun and Saturn on August 2nd as representing a threshold. Okay, it's something that you're stepping over, but because it can also represent a weak point, and this is such a volatile and treacherous part of the sky right now, given the energies of Uranus, it can also represent a tripwire. So your big question this week is going to be, am I stepping over a threshold, or am I stepping on a tripwire? And what is this all about? What this is all about is you making a choice or a decision, or being faced with a choice or a decision that's going to be very much life changing. Now, many of you may already know about this. And so this may be a decision that you've been putting off, or that you've been waiting to hear back from the other side, or that you're not so sure about. And then others of you may be feeling like, the time to act is now, or the time when the universe should act right now is right now, or the time when this is going to happen is right now. But what you're going to be feeling this week is a tremendous urgency and a very big question. Am I stepping over a threshold, or am I stepping on a tripwire? So basically what I want to describe to you is that you have reached the point of no return in this area of life that I'm describing, where you have to do something. You can no longer fence it, you can no longer put off, you can no longer defer, you can no longer delay. You have to do something. Now that might sound like, okay, let's focus our willpower, let's get our motivation going, let's stay focused on the goal at hand. I'm now going to march forward and do something. And that might have been the way that things would have turned out if not for the square to Uranus, which takes place on August 6th. Any sort of square to Uranus is basically a wild card square. That's the thing, that's the element or the piece of the puzzle or the thing that you were not expecting to happen happens. And that gets tossed into this opposition on August 6th. So that basically what happens is that that square that the sun forms to the Uranus on August 6th works as a kind of scissors. Okay, so if you're thinking of this line that exists, this opposition line that exists between the Sun and the Saturn, and is being held with this tension, what happens is that the Uranus, which is not in a sign that it is in domicile in or has any sort of planetary dignity, so Uranus is free to do whatever the hell it wants to. So basically, Uranus gets triggered as a wild card, and it moves forward, and it basically cuts this tie, cuts this tug of war rope that exists between the Sun and Saturn, so that both sides go tumbling back. So basically, what I'm here to tell you is that after August 6th, there will be some sort of wild card event that will break this tie between the Sun and Saturn, where you will either go tumbling into the future headlong and with no idea of what's going to come next, or you will go falling back into the past and start scrambling for higher and safer ground, wondering what the hell you were thinking to begin with.
Hi, I'm Rick Levine, and I'm so excited to be offering you the chance to study with me during our live chart reading practice month here at Astrology Hub. This course consists of 4 live sessions, each 2 hours long, where I'm going to be looking at a handful of students' charts live and demonstrating how to read a birth chart while actually receiving feedback from the designated clients in real time. This is astrology in action. This is where the rubber meets the road, and you'll be right there with me as I navigate the unique dynamics of these individuals' charts. The sessions will be streaming live every Thursday afternoon in August at 5 p.m. Pacific, that's 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can enroll now at astrologyhub.com/charts. Oh, and by the way, you'll have the opportunity to submit your chart data for consideration to be one of those that will be read live during the sessions. Again, that's astrologyhub.com/charts. I hope to see you there.